All right, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this session. Just wanted to get a quick check. Can you see the presentation?
Yes.
All right, great, thank you. Confirming that. So of course, the first slide I am required to present. This event is being recorded, so if you're not comfortable with it, please take the appropriate action. All right, moving on from that. So DRTConfidence. So to give you a little bit of background, this is a GRC tool that we have been developing for some time. We've been following OSCAL for the last couple of years, and our feeling was that, given the value that OSCAL provides, there's a huge opportunity to kind of reinvent how SSPs are built, how assessments are documented, and there's a lot of value that can be provided to the various stakeholders. So we decided to build this tool ground up on OSCAL, not just from a data model perspective, but also from best practices perspective. We titled this session TurboTax, and I know that's kind of, some folks like TurboTax, some don't, but again, it was more from a metaphoric standpoint. But we'll walk you a little bit through what our thinking and philosophy is and why we think this has to be done a little differently. So with that, to give you a brief introduction about our company, DRT Strategies is a government contracting firm. We have been in business for many years, founded in 2004. Our primary customers are FDA, Department of Commerce, USDA, CMS, Department of Justice, IRS, FEMA, CDC, and all. And we're primarily offering digital transformation services, cloud migration services, cloud migration strategy development. And we have been doing this for a few years. And like everybody knows, as you're going through cloud transformation, ATO is always the heartburn. And so we've been focused in that. We did a strategy consulting engagement with CMS a couple of years ago, codenamed Rapid ATO. And a lot of the thought process were built into our platform really came from that exercise. And we're proud to say CMS has continued that initiative, and I think it is still called Rapid ATO to some extent. So that's kind of who we are. Now, what is our philosophy in terms of what we are trying to build here? And as we wanted to build the new GRC tool, we had to have a strong tenet as to why. Our philosophy is that now that security compliance documentation can be expressed in a developer-friendly format, it does not automatically become their work. And so we want to be cautious in the sense that because we can now express everything in JSON and XML, and we can put it in Git, and we can use all of the other tools that developers are used to using, it does not mean that this becomes their work. I don't think app dev folks really want to be sitting around writing control implementation details. They want to be building systems. I mean, they want to be meeting the mission of the agencies. And so this was one of the tenets that we kind of really took to heart. We want to build something in such a way that we can alleviate the burden, not necessarily just convert it into a developer tool or technology and throw it over to them. And so that's really been at heart, and everything we've been building from that most basic tenet that we're sticking with. So having said that, how do we achieve that? How did we decide to approach that? So our goal has always been that the stakeholders that are involved should be able to perform their tasks in their domain. Now, we want to be very careful. We don't want to take, these emerging concepts and just, throw them over the wall, causing people to go learn domains that is not their core domain. A lot of the ISOs out there are not technical. They're not going to read JSONs. They're not going to write JSONs or XML. A lot of the app devs, respect security and compliance, but don't necessarily want to learn and understand controls-based framework. And so our tenet, again, our goal has been that our platform guides stakeholders in their domain in what they are trying to do. And behind the scenes, we're automating the document generation and validation on the principles of OSCAL. And to that extent, we will abstract what we need to abstract. If we have to have human intervention, either at the app dev or the ISOs or the assessors, we're trying to build an ability so that they can interact without having to learn a whole new domain, which is not particularly there. So they will never see JSONs, they will never see XMLs. They don't fully have to understand OSCAL as well. We take care of that, but they have to stay focused in their domain in terms of what is it the app dev need to develop, what is it that the assessors need to assess, what is that the ISOs need to focus on, and of course, end of the day, what is the risk that everybody is dealing with? And that's really primarily kind of our approach. And so we've been building the platform, fairly differently from that perspective. So let's peel that further in terms of how do we help stakeholders continue to perform their tasks in their own domain. And so one of the core concepts that we came up with, and this was in a very, very crude format as we kind of wrapped up Rapid ATO and CMS, but the core tenet is exactly the same. And again, this is very notional. Please don't hold me to the blue boxes specifically, but notionally, our point is that we are all in the service of the mission. And what that means is we're in the service of the business owner and the app devs. Yes, as security personnel, our job is to make sure the systems are secure, make sure that we understand the risk, and we are, deciding how to manage risk. But end of the day, we are at their service. And that's really a very important perspective. We're not the center of the universe, and now everybody else needs to figure out how to work with the security team. We're all at the service of the business owner. So to that extent, everything is really focused on the aspect of developing a system, which obviously goes through, its various natural steps of its own. You initiate a system, define what you're going to build. You start to select the platform. What are you going to leverage to build it? You're going to go through a tech stack, select a tech stack, either something that's pre-existing or something new that you're going to introduce. You begin to assemble your services, doing your architecture, your third party, your interfaces, and then you start building it out. And more often than not, you really don't have 100% control on your inventory. And so you're going to have the ability to discover your inventory at any given point in snapshot. And so that's really the core process that one is undertaking in building a system, making major enhancements, or maintaining a system. So from that perspective, we map back to that core process that is being undertaken, and we try to find where can we map that and where can we automate or make it easy for the ISOs to be able to do their work in their lane. And as the dev teams are doing their part, how can we bring the information down and we can influence the development of the security artifacts? And likewise, as those are being developed, how can we take those developments and influence the assessment plans and the assessor's work? And so our notional view here really is, as the app devs are making their decisions and going through their process, what can we do to simplify the ISO's work, automate it to some extent? If it does require manual intervention, how do we present it to them so that it's not, always control-centric and everybody has to learn what control-centric information means? And so if you see here, a lot of these arrows are really workflows, and we're looking at every blue box as a potential workflow. We make sure the data moves across all of these layers. It can be coming down, it can be moving back up. But at any time, we're looking to build a ton of tiny workflows. Some might be long running, some might be very short. But the idea here is really to guide all the stakeholders through the process be the orchestrator, manage the data, maintain integrity of the data, at any given point in time, of course, generate it in any format that you would like. And so the core purpose of the business owners, the app devs, is to assemble solutions to meet the mission. How can we keep them focused on that aspect? And the ISOs should largely be reviewing, adjusting, advising, and approving the security profiles that are largely being assembled for them, but their focus should not be assembling it. Their focus should be on reviewing, adjusting, advising, and approving. And likewise for the assessors, their focus obviously needs to be also on how am I going to ensure you have done what you said you were going to do. And so to that extent, how can we assemble their artifacts as well along the process so they're really focused more on reviewing, adjusting, advising, and approving, not assembling. And so that's kind of our path to automation, how we see automation. We don't see us going from point one to point N, in one shot. We just see micro automations that are going to take place initially. And over a period of time, we're just going to increase the amount of automation, and we'll probably never get to 100% automation. So I would probably be saying we'd be optimizing, not fully automating. And so that's kind of how we think about it. And so let's peel that onion a little bit further and get even deeper as to how do we do that. And for the purpose of this discussion, I'm probably going to take the first step and really focus on the first step. How does that break down? Because that's really, again, the core tenet of our approach and how we are looking to solve this problem. So, and how does OSCAL help in that aspect? This is not a NIST representation. This is strictly my representation. So we consider this as an OSCAL data pipeline. And you will notice that the arrows are all pointing the other way. The OSCAL artifacts are obviously referencing artifacts upstream. However, the data is flowing downstream. And so our view of this is from a perspective that your catalogs are being defined by standards organizations. Currently, we have the Rev 4 and Rev 5. Likewise, profiles are being defined by other organizations as well. FedRAMP has defined their high, moderate, low, and actually LISAS. But there could be other agency-specific profiles or system-specific profiles. We see a huge opportunity here where some of these profiles can be tailored further to meet use case requirements, specific use case requirements. So if you're a system that maintains PII, there might be a specific profile that applies to you. So there can be some policies that can be implemented on how and which profiles can be selected. Ultimately, what we build out a system-specific profile, which is your tailored understanding of what you're promising to implement. And based on that profile, that really drives all the artifacts downstream, and it influences everything that we do. And so in our view, the profile that is developed for the system is kind of the contract that the system is signing and saying, I shall deliver the promise of the profile. And so from that perspective, every artifact downstream is making sure I'm defining how I'm meeting that contract. The assessment plan is driven from the profile to make sure that you have met that promise, and the results are going to tell you whether you have or you haven't, and that's how you get to the POA&Ms. So there's a lot of data that flows downstream up to the ATO. And then to that, then you have component definitions. So as you're selecting the platforms, you're selecting the physical locations, your policies, and any other shared services that you're going to be integrating into the system, you're influencing how you intend to deliver that promise. So that's kind of how we look at it. And we want to support the entire data pipeline from start to finish, allow people to be able to do their tasks, and we take care of all of this data flow that needs to be taking place from start to finish. So let's take a quick look even deeper. I'm gonna start going deeper. Keeping that example in mind, how do we effectuate all of the different aspects of OSCAL on the different layers? We know the profile drives your included controls, and we take those included controls, automatically drive the implemented requirements assemblies in the SSP. We automatically pull them into the SAP as the target list of reviewed controls. You can obviously remove from them in case you're not going for a full assessment and you're going for an incremental assessment. And the reviewed controls that have been selected in the SAP drive the reviewed controls that you have in the SAR. And that's really the data flow that needs to be maintained. You don't want the SAR going back to the profile. You really want it to pull from the plan. Likewise, we see a great concept in the FedRAMP profiles. They have a concept called response points. So you can take the catalog control that you have included, and then within the control, you can customize at what point are you expecting the system to document its implementation and what specific objectives you're expecting the assessments to be conducted with those methods. And those response points are a great way to kind of manage your granularity at which you're looking to define and assess. I think FedRAMP has defined clear response points at the statements level and at the objectives level. A lot of the agencies we work with, they just work at the control level. But this is a great construct, and we really took it to heart, and we've built the product around that construct itself. So we do like to customize profiles for customers with response points, and what we will do automatically is assemble the SSP with the corresponding implemented requirements with the corresponding statement placeholders based on the response points. So your draft SSP skeleton is automatically being generated based on the promise that you've made. Likewise, the objectives are going to be driving the tasks within the SAP, and they're going to be driving, placeholders within, the SAR. So we can generate a SAR with placeholders for findings, with targets being driven by statement response points. We can have observations being targeted by objectives. And of course, the task that you conducted to test these objectives are your origins. Likewise, the components that you included into your profile, into your SSP, drives your by components. That's kind of based on the profile, based on your rating, security rating, or your baseline. We import the implemented requirements into the by components. And of course, based on those components, you're going to define your inventories. And all of this data then drives into your assessment subjects. And those subjects can be assigned to your tasks because you have your objectives of the controls that you need to test, and you have subjects that claim to implement those controls. So you're defining your task, attaching your subjects, and these subjects are going to show up in the observations. So there's a significant amount of data reference that happens between these, and the integrity of the data needs to be maintained from start to finish. And so our approach, again, as I said, from a philosophy standpoint, it's not just a file builder where you just go and build a file. You can access the assemblies and code it or get it done. It's really do your work from start to finish. Focus on what components you need to build, and we will assemble the SSP for you. As you've assembled the SSP, we're getting your SAP ready to go. And if there are best practices, like for example, different 3POs have different best practices on how they like to assess controls from different families, we can build template tasks, we can look for certain subjects, we can help assemble the SAP based on those best practices. And based on that SAP, you can assemble a SAR that is kind of a placeholder saying, once you've conducted your assessment, here's where I expect to see all of these results. And then, of course, we can run all the validations, we can generate the POA&Ms, but our approach is really making sure that we automate this entire process, maintain data integrity, end to end, and allow individuals to do their work. So that's kind of our approach. So let's take that a little bit deeper. So we're going to try to see if I can bring the system up, and I will show you a demo of what this looks like in real life. Now we have two parts of the application, and in this particular demonstration, I'm going to focus just on the initiate system part. We have a look and feel for business owner and app devs, which is a standard, portal-based view. They do not have to understand OSCAL, but they can access all of the content about the systems, the SSPs, the SARs, everything else. And then we have one for the ISOs or the assessment teams, which is a lot more workflow-based. So you're going to see a lot of those workflows implemented here that we expect the ISOs and the assessment teams to be able to conduct. All right, so let me see. Let me bring over the system. I guess I'm going to have to get out of the presentation. All right, so this is kind of what our tool looks like for the ISOs and the assessors. And like I mentioned, they're really focused more on the data. We don't expect business owner or app devs to be working at this level of detail. They should be working at a much higher level of detail focused in their lane. So in our tool here, you can pretty much import, export any of the OSCAL files. We have a core module where you can define your roles, locations, and parties, which is kind of accessed at a multitude of locations as responsible parties. We have catalogs imported. The NIST Rev 4 and Rev 5 are fully imported into the tool. We have profiles imported, which is all of the FedRAMP profiles, and this is where we would have any system-specific profiles that we have created based on those baselines. Those will be available here. Any component definitions can be imported, which either they're leverage packages, hopefully they're component definitions. We can import component definition files. We have some samples created right now to kind of symbolize your enterprise policies and procedures can be broken into a single component. Any interconnections that you have are going to be a separate component. Any shared services that you're leveraging from your internal managed service or external managed service, typically log processing, audit management, or if you have a SOC operating that is going to conduct some of the work that is expected to be conducted, those can be loaded as components as shared services. And so all that can be imported into the system, and you really focus on developing your system plans and of course conducting your assessments. So we have the whole data model built out, ground up on OSCAL, and you'll see as we have assessments, you can define your assessment purposes, scope, methodology, you can define the plan, and then you have the results. So you have a complete SAP modeled out here that you could work on, and this is kind of a view where the ISO or the assessors can get down to the individual assemblies. They can work through all of them. We make sure all the OSCAL valid values and constraints are automatically implemented. So you can go through all of the part, and you'll see the subjects are getting automatically populated based on the SSP. Your assessment controls are automatically be pulled in from your profile, and any tools that you've decided to use, you load them up here. And actors are also defined from your responsible parties. So a lot of that information is being brought over into the downstream artifacts. To give you a quick sense of workflows, we have developed workflows. This is the example of a new system workflow. We go through the typical prepare and categorize. And what's going to happen in this workflow is you go through a basic questionnaire process. I think everybody's familiar with this. It's kind of similar with some of the other tools as well. But as you answer these questions, we kick off a bunch of processes on the side. So if you do say we have a PII, and so we'll initiate a PIA process, which goes through its own workflow and helps you get the PIA done. So likewise, we collect a lot of this information, and you can go through your information type selections. You can define your responsible parties, and based on your categorization on the FIPS 199 categorization, we will offer up the profiles that qualify, and you can select your profile, and we'll build your control set. And so we have workflows built out, and you see folks don't have to understand OSCAL. They have to focus on conducting their own specific tasks. We have workflows built out for new system workflows, for PIAs, for BIAs, and we continue to build this out for the other ENA artifacts as well. And so once you go through the SARs and your results have been produced and your findings have materialized, your assessment is over. If you have any findings that have failed and you have risks identified, you can post them into a risk register, and the risk register will then help you to manage your risk through its life cycle process as well. And so all of this is built ground up on OSCAL and allows the users to be able to conduct their work without having to learn OSCAL or having to know the assemblies or all of the rules. We have FedRAMP validations coded into it so that prior to generating any of the OSCAL artifacts, you can conduct a FedRAMP validation. We can customize additional validations as well. I'll give you an example. This is an SSP. And I can generate the OSCAL file at any time from any of these locations. We've generated a few times. I can validate the SSP, and at that point, it'll tell me all the FedRAMP validations prior to being generated or sent out. So you can generate OSCAL files at any point. You can do a bulk export from the export section, so we can get a whole package exported. And we're hoping to do this for a real customer in the next couple of months. So that's kind of what it does. It's built on. We also have a portal side for the business owners. Let me see if I can get to it. There we go. And the portal site is really meant for the business owners and app devs. They don't have to understand all of those OSCAL assemblies or the constraints. They get their information as they would like to see it. So this is a sample system that we've stood up. You can access your SSPs, your POA&Ms, your PIAs. You can see the components that are listed, inventories. We also have a controls dashboard for them to be able to see, from a dashboard perspective, where do your control standings look like? Just from a visual representation, not that they would really understand what the implementations mean. And as you continue to add components from a development standpoint, you can see here as dev teams want to add additional components, we automatically populate all of the by component statements in the SSP and continue to build that out. And if anybody would like at any time, they can review the SSP or generate an OSCAL file and publish it. We are building an automation platform as well that will allow you to publish the OSCAL files out there as well. So it's as easy as clicking this, and you can download any of the OSCAL files at any time. So that's kind of how we're taking this approach. We are really focused a lot more on allowing people to do their job and let us take care of the underlying automation and everything else. So I guess I'm going to pause there at this point and see if there are any questions. All right, just to wrap up, we support all our OSCAL artifacts, catalog, profile component, SSP, SAP, SAR, POA&M. We've imported Rev 4, Rev 5. We have all the FedRAMP baselines. We have information types and threat IDs imported. We generate all the OSCAL artifacts in JSON format. We have workflows built out for FIPS 199, PIA, BIA. We're building out EAuth as well. We automatically generate some of the draft documentation based on where you are in the process. And we have a validations module to be able to validate all of the data based on OSCAL rules as well as FedRAMP rules, and then if there are any custom validations that need to be added.
I don't know if there's any way to raise the hands. I'll just jump in. Thanks for that walkthrough. Two questions. Did you come up against rough edges in OSCAL as a standard in trying to make a working system? And second, do you have this DRTConfidence described itself in OSCAL? And what was that experience like in dogfooding your own system into OSCAL?
Right. So yes, we did. We did come across a lot of, we were building this as OSCAL was evolving. And so, yes, there was a level of constant rework that we had to do. But where OSCAL ended up baselined, it's really in a very good place. We had to make a lot of micro decisions. OSCAL is a very flexible standard, allows you to express information in many different ways. Since we generate more than we import, we had to make a series of decisions. How are we going to represent this in OSCAL? Where do we use props? And, do we have arrays? Do we have a single item and things like that? So based on our experience of having done some of this work at FDA and USD and the others, we've implemented some of those best practices. So what we produce is OSCAL compliant, is FedRAMP compliant, but we had to make a lot of decisions in terms of how we will represent the data going out. In terms of our own tool, we are built on ServiceNow, and we're operating in a FedRAMP high environment in ServiceNow's government cloud. We built it on ServiceNow primarily because, like we said, our viewpoint is a lot of micro workflows are going to be needed to help people do their work, and it's a great platform to customize workflows and deploy them for our customers really fast. So that's hope I answer your question.
Thank you.
So I see a question on the component definitions. Component definitions get imported into our tool, and they are in DRTC. Like I said, from our perspective, our job is to help author these files through its lifecycle and maintain data integrity, so we get them generated. Once the data goes out, it can be put into a repo anywhere that anybody would like.